Theory of Nothing podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Wiora.
I'm your co-host, Chris Keene.
Well, by popular demand, Chris,
Yeah?
we're back.
Oh, my God. So last episode, you said we got 10 billion views.
Did I say 10 billion?
Yeah, 10 billion.
Well, that's no surprise because we've been requested to return by 20 billion people.
Oh,
We
my
received
God. We doubled.
double the amount
Holy
of
shit.
emails and views and likes and
Oh, man. Jack in the Box must have called by now. It's a sponsor.
not just Jack in the Box, but all the late night talk shows want us.
Oh, wow. Well, they should come on here, really.
That's right.
We'd
We'll
be
have
doing them a
Fallon
favor.
and Kimmel
Fallon.
and Colbert sitting on this very
Who would
small
be the most?
couch.
I feel like Fallon would be the most ridiculous, maybe. I don't know. I don't know which would be the most ridiculous. Out of
Well,
those.
I think the person who would probably like this podcast the most, either fortunately or unfortunately, is Bill Maher.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
can see that. Okay. I don't think of him when I think of late night, but he is a late night host,
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah. You love Bill Maher, don't you?
I think that he has been the most consistent voice in late night over the past 20 years.
Okay.
That's what I'll say about
There's
Bill
things
Maher.
I like about him. There's things I don't like about him, which is literally every person on the planet,
Yeah.
which is also kind of what this podcast is going to be about.
Exactly,
You know?
yeah. Today we're going to discuss the theory of disagreement. Before we get there, though,
Yeah.
Chris, I have a couple of housekeeping notes
Okay.
at the top. Because I've been listening to your comments on YouTube, our comments on the Instagram, our comments from friends and family and enemies and long-lost loves and all of the above.
Wait, I have long lost loves commenting? I didn't see
All of them.
that. God damn.
And
Maria, DM me. I miss you.
who's that?
I made it up.
Oh, Imaginary loves then, I guess. I don't know. So people seem to really vibe and have thoughts and opinions about our discussion on The Truman Show
Really?
from last episode.
Oh, man, I didn't see this.
Yeah.
I don't read anything.
You gotta read what the fans are saying,
Oh,
Chris.
damn, what did they say?
Well, they just I had people, and mostly it was anecdotal people texting me
Oh.
after I texted them 50 times to listen and
that.
to watch and to be a bringer for my
Was
shows.
Dervaslo one of the people?
No, he doesn't listen to this.
No.
But we did get our Nick Dervaslo mention in, like, I think probably 2.5 or 3 minutes into
Hell
the pod.
yeah, we
so
did. Well, he's going to be dead soon. He's has a slight case of Ebola right now.
He is. He's perpetually ill, and the
Yeah.
illness is just
Mainly mental. but-
yes. But interesting about the Truman Show. Last episode we talked about how, and this is actually, I guess, kind of related to the theory of disagreement, how we have different opinions on it.
Yeah.
I think what I said was that I liked the movie but didn't love it,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave reasons why. And what I said on the last podcast is that I would watch the Truman Show between then and now.
Yeah. Did you do it?
I did. I went back and
God
rewatched
damn it. I didn't watch it.
Why not?
I've seen it so many times, though. I know it.
Yeah.
I know it so well. And I'm in love with a woman in it.
Oh, which
The
wait, we
woman,
talked
the
about
woman
this.
that he loves.
Yes.
Oh, my God. She's so gorgeous.
Right. The girl he meets in the library.
She looks like someone, but I can't say it on camera because it's someone we know and everyone we know knows. And it'll be super awkward.
Well, so it's
That-
interesting.
It'll be super awkward that Catbird knows that I think she looks
We
like.
gotta. Oh, we can keep that in.
I'm just
I
kidding.
say that every episode, by the way. I'm like, we'll delete this and then we keep it in. And
All
that's
right,
what
what
ends
were you
up
saying
happening.
about Truman Show?
Well, no, but I still don't love the movie.
okay.
I still don't. But what's interesting about it is I went down like a Wikipedia rabbit hole about it, and apparently, kind of an interesting fun fact is the director Peter Weir
Oh, he's great.
wanted the movie to be shown in theaters, and there was a moment in the theater where he wanted the projectionist, is that what you call that person?
Yeah.
The person running the
I
projector
think.
to cut the movie and basically somehow, and this is pre-streaming, this was in the late 90s, but to cut to a shot of the audience.
That would be awesome.
It was interesting, though, in the context of our last conversation, because our note about The Truman Show was that it was horrifying then to imagine a world where your life was broadcast all the time, and now it is. If that move were to be done today, where a projectionist cut a movie in the theater and showed faces of you, and when I say you, I mean the general you, I do wonder what the reaction would be given what we talked about last time.
Man, yeah. That's interesting.
Would anyone be startled by it at all?
You know what I picture people doing today?
What?
Taking out their phones and filming themselves on the camera. So they're filming themselves being filmed. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, dude, I was watching WWE, like, wrestling, like, the other day.
Yeah.
And, like, there's people who have, I don't know if you know wrestling, but the wrestler walks down through the crowd.
Right, sure.
To the ring.
Okay.
And they're surrounded by all the people.
Yeah.
And literally the whole crowd is just standing there like this, with their phone filming the guy.
Yeah.
Not even enjoying the fact that they have these front row seats and they get to maybe give the guy a high five.
I know.
They're just like, oh, it was kind of scary.
Yeah.
But I can see them doing that in the theater. Oh,
Right.
I'm on camera. Let me film
myself on camera with my camera.
Yeah, in the 90s, I feel like people would kind of be like, whoa, like, and like kind of laugh uncomfortably or something. Or
it would have been like a major talking point of conversation that this was done. It actually, though, in some ways, it's good that it didn't happen because it probably would have spawned a lot of imitators from that, and that would have gotten really annoying very quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely see that.
Well, so that's really all I wanted to say about The Truman Show. I guess I'm just never going to love this movie as much as cinephiles do. Like, there are cinephiles who like think it's the best movie of all time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there are people like people who love movies love The Truman Show.
It's in my top 10, I think.
Yeah, well, so that you love it.
Yes.
And think about, you've probably seen over 1,000 movies in your life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I don't know. I'm missing something with it. I guess I don't know. I you know what's funny about it is I love Jim Carrey, and I've always thought Jim Carrey was a better serious actor than a comic actor. Of course, he's more well known for like Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, and Liar Liar, stuff like that. But like, I love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I love Man in the Moon.
Unbelievable.
I love a lot of his serious stuff. There's something about The Truman Show, I guess, that doesn't resonate with me.
That is so wild. That's my favorite one.
Yeah. Well,
but I love all those other ones too.
I guess we might have to, Chris. I guess we might have to agree. We might have to agree to disagree here.
Oh my God.
We might have to agree to disagree.
Hey, that reminds me of a podcast we're supposed to film,
which is The Theory of Disagreement. And could not have been a more perfect transition because I want to start with that expression, agree to disagree.
Yes.
There's a comic that you and I are both friends with. His name is Misha Perez.
Who's that? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Misha Perez
I love
is
him.
Wildly talented, wonderful comic
with great political opinions. Let me tell you.
He's very young. He's 22, maybe 23. And
my favorite thing he ever said to me is that the government cares about us.
Yeah.
Brian. They care about us.
They care about some things about us.
Yeah, how they can make money off of us.
Well,
that's their biggest
that's
one.
why anyone cares about anything, right?
Oh, maybe. But what about Misha?
Well, he has this bit that's very funny about how in the 90s, the biggest insult you could give someone is by saying the word "not" afterwards, like, "Oh, I like your shoes." Not.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I feel like agree to disagree, that expression, much like the expression "not," has disappeared from modern discourse.
Which is fucking nuts because that's not an expression. That's like a morally, it's like a moral idea. It's
Sure.
like something that we should all be living by.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's not a fad. Agree
Right.
to disagree is not a fad. It's how it's almost the basis of America if you think about it, right?
100%.
That's the whole point of the country
Yep.
is to accept different ideas.
Yeah.
And all live together despite our differences.
So I totally agree with that. But so you and I talk a lot about this, how it seems like now there is more political dissent amongst people And we've actually talked about it on this podcast. Where does that come from? Does it come from the fact that people are getting their news from different sources? You said, I think, on our first episode that you feel like people are living in different realities.
They are, yes.
And I think that's interesting. But what I've noticed is it bleeds into sort of all forms of discourse. It seems like in modern society, where people can't agree to disagree on what music is the best.
Yeah.
I'm a huge sports fan, and these sports conversations have gotten at the level of seriousness and heightened sort of what I'm trying to think of the word, like intensity.
I know what you mean, dude. I see people get like heated about like who the GOAT is in basketball.
Right.
Like actually angry and
Well, who
will
do
be
you
insulting
who do you
people.
think that we've never talked about this? Who do you think it is?
Anyone that says LeBron, I don't fucking understand.
Hell yeah.
I don't get that at all.
Yeah, I'm a Jordan guy.
Oh, 100%, dude.
Yeah.
But I also like a lot of other people more than LeBron, though.
Yeah.
As players. But are we doing this simply by statistics? I have no idea. But
Well, that's a really good point, and that leads.
dude, Larry Bird in his prime had similar stats to LeBron.
Yeah.
Some better in some areas. So it's just
we could do 45 minutes on basketball. I would,
Yeah,
and
we don't
I'd love
need to.
no, but I want to do a couple. I think LeBron probably has to be number 2 all
Okay.
time. And the reason is because of how long he's been doing it.
Uh-huh.
He's been doing it
Yeah.
over 20 years now.
But so I have
and
things to say about that.
All the different eras of him and whatnot. Like Bird was great, but Bird kind of had a classic sort of career where there was a rise and a peak and then a fall.
Well, it's all because he didn't take care of his body.
Sure.
And also that medicine, everything has progressed so much.
Yeah.
And these guys today are way more taken care of than back then. Medicine has advanced. Right. Everything has advanced.
I mean, Bird was eating McDonald's cheeseburgers at halftime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like drinking beers and like, yeah.
But
he would mow his own lawn. He ruined his back paving his mom's driveway himself.
Well,
this is like the most famous player in the world, and he's doing manual labor. That's how he ruined his back, which ruined the end of his career. But anyways,
no, and I'm a big fan of the old guys in basketball and football. I like football more than basketball, and I talk about football stuff a lot more. And what's interesting, I'm always a defender of like guys like Montana. And even going back like Johnny Unitas and stuff like this. But when it comes to basketball, the old guys too, Hakeem, Wilt, Oscar.
And see, now we're getting into all these different topics, but I hate when people are like, oh, that guy's a joke. He could never compete in today's NBA or today's league or whatever. Yeah, it's a totally different world. Everything is different.
Right.
Like, first of all, they played way rougher in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like saying like, oh, well, Babe Ruth, if he played now, he'd suck or something in baseball.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a totally different
I haven't
world.
heard that as much in baseball. Baseball seems like the game that's changed the least of any of the major sports.
Well, it's a classic. It's timeless. It's a beautiful. Baseball's my favorite
It's like
thing
American.
in the world.
It's like I was about to say American pie. It's like apple pie.
Yes.
It's as American as pie. But
anyway,
wait, hold on. But this point is interesting that you're making, Chris, because I think that when it comes to a guy like LeBron, first of all, not everyone in the modern NBA takes care of their body the way he does. Would be the counter argument to that.
Okay. Yeah.
And I sound like a LeBron stan here. Like I have Jordan firmly ahead of LeBron. I actually have rooted against LeBron in almost every single NBA Finals. I was a big Warriors fan when it was the Warriors Cavs, and of course when it was the Mavs, my team, the Dallas Mavericks, which have now undergone the biggest cataclysm in the history of sports with the Luka trade.
Yeah.
But when it was the Mavs versus the Heat at that time, I was a huge Mavs fan, obviously, and went to even one of the finals games, which was probably the coolest sports experience I've ever had in my entire life.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I've rooted against LeBron. But what's interesting, and this relates to this conversation, is one sort of philosophy I adopt in my life is that you shouldn't hate someone who you don't respect.
You shouldn't hate someone that you don't respect.
Yeah. So I have kind of grown up and lived my life hating LeBron because,
Really? Okay.
but it's only because I respect him so much that I hate him. He's so good. I wouldn't hate a bad NBA player. It makes no sense to hate someone who.
Well, I don't hate LeBron. You hate LeBron.
Well, I mean, when I root against him constantly.
Oh, I find him very annoying.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I hate him.
Well, I
don't want bad things to happen.
But I
to
hate
him.
playing. I hate it when my teams play against LeBron.
Yeah, I find him annoying. He just seems like he thinks dude. Didn't he nickname himself King James? Didn't he?
Yeah, but
I mean, come on, dude.
You get to do a certain.
No, if you're doing, you're an idiot if you're doing stuff like that. I can't even deal with that.
You would be very funny as King Keene.
Or the Piss King. Maybe. No.
Well, King Keene.
King Keene.
Say that. You can't say that
King
5 times
Keene,
fast.
King Keene, King
Yeah,
Keene,
you
King
can't say-
Keene.
King Keene.
This podcast is off to an amazing start. Let me tell you.
This is incredible.
This is. Yeah. All right.
I love.
We're supposed to be talking about
this.
Disagreement. We've talked about like the Truman Show, LeBron James,
But it's all related.
That's true.
Let's tie it all together. Here's how we tie
right.
it all together.
Yeah, let's
you
put
ready
it
for this?
together. Yeah.
So, you and I have a really cool friendship. And the reason is because we have a lot of disagreements between us.
Yeah.
A ton.
Yeah, but that's good.
But we often agree to disagree.
Yes.
And I feel like that's a little bit rare amongst people younger than the age of 50.
Well, certainly younger than the age of 40 and 30.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't understand that.
So let's try to break this down a little bit. So
yeah, there's so many things. I mean, I'm almost overwhelmed with how many things there are to say about this. You know
well,
what I
that's why
mean?
we made a podcast.
Yeah, like there's so many things. There's the fact that now if somebody doesn't think like you, they're evil, they're bad. You know, it's good guys and bad guys, especially with politics. But yeah, there's an attitude of if they think that means they're a bad person,
Mm-hmm.
not just I disagree.
Mm-hmm.
There's that. Now I lost my train of thought. What we were saying before that. Oh, just that we disagree. Okay, yeah. Well, that's the main thing. Is like we have disagreements, but they're not. I don't look at someone's opinions as a reflection of who they are as a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're a good person. So what do I care who you voted for, who you think is the best basketball player, what you appreciate about comedy, you know? And what the other thing I don't understand is why why would you want to hang out with people who just agree with everything that you think? Not only is that boring, it's almost psychotic though. Like you just want to hang out with, you just want a yes man next to you. Yes. You know, what you think is right. Like I don't.
Yeah.
How do you even have a conversation? Oh, you like this? Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, it's like what?
So you bring up a couple of good points here. Go ahead.
The main thing I think is this crap about if you think a certain thing or if you disagree with me, you're a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Not just you're somebody who thinks differently. You're a bad person. Like I've had people say things to me that are unbelievable. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent.
No,
now,
I love this. I love this. I'm just going to look at my notes really quickly.
No, I've had people go on say such ridiculous things to me, man. Like, I mean, I've lost so many friends over political disagreements. Now, part of it at the time for some of them was my fault because I was not communicating well. I was being annoying and I would like kind of pick fights sometimes, and I learned to not do that. But even after learning to not do that, I've still lost friends from it.
Right.
I've had people be like, "Oh, yeah, I don't want to repeat what people have said to me, but just very judgmental about and they have this attitude of like, if you think a certain thing, if you vote a certain way, if then that's, oh, those are the bad people. I'm the good person. They're bad. It's like a 5-year-old. Like, that's not how the world works.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But anyway, I don't like anything I just said.
I like all of it.
Okay.
We're gonna have to agree to disagree on
right.
what you just said there.
Yeah. I feel like I should have explained it better.
No, I think you explained it perfectly. And to sort of, I think, from my vantage point, summarize what you just said here is that, look, we live in this world where opinions about even shallow level things are seen as like moral stances.
Yes, dude. Yeah.
And I don't know where that came from other than maybe social media and just people. It started sort of with, Facebook statuses and then Twitter, X, and Instagram and all of that stuff. It just became that your opinions became your personality. And that your personality subsequently became your soul or something. Your moral fiber.
Right. It speaks to like who you are. That's who this person is.
Yeah.
Like, that are the kind of person that,
Yeah. And what's interesting is, and I don't know if, I think some people might be listening to this and thinking like, oh, you're skating around certain issues. I think I'm actually trying to address this issue universally. And when I say that, to speak about it in the context of politics and specifically American politics, because as you know, Chris, we've got international listeners to this podcast. We got people in Burma and Laos, in
Istanbul, listening.
Chile,
Mars. There's people on Mars. Elon's listening.
That's right.
He's up on Mars. He's got the theory of nothing.
We've got it's international and it's intergalactical actually, but actually I think it's just intergalactic.
Yeah.
Oops. My thing about American politics and what's happening in this red versus blue, left versus right is both of them, what I see, believe that they are. That the reason they believe what they believe is because it is moral. It is ethical to believe what they believe. And if you disagree, you are an unethical person.
You're evil. You're evil.
Yeah, right.
You're like the spawn of Satan.
So my question always is like, okay, so where did you...
It wasn't like that. It was not like that. I just saw a clip from the 90s. The Rock spoke at the Republican National. He was just doing a character, but he was at the Republican National Convention in the 90s.
Yeah.
If an actor went to the Republican National Convention now, they'd be, people would come with them for pitchforks, like they're evil,
right?
Because it's just.
Oh, and there's that clip of Chris Farley at the '96 House Convention or whatever, doing his impression of Newt Gingrich.
Right. If he did that now, he'd be, that's a right-wing comedian.
Yeah, right.
And right-wing is bad, and I'm good. It's just, what the fuck?
But I'm not trying. So this is actually a problem with both sides, which is
the other side does it too.
Yeah.
Like, that's a woke comedian.
Right.
It's all the same.
It's
shit.
both sides here, and the biggest issue I have is like, where did these people get their moral expertise from? Where do you get your moral training from? And here's the analogy, Chris, that I like to use is like, imagine me espousing medical opinions and diagnosing medical conditions. Everyone would ask me, oh, Brian, where did you do medical training? How do you know this stuff, right? So I would be like, oh, I didn't go to medical school. I didn't even do well in high school biology. And people would then discredit me because they'd say this guy's not an expert. Yet somehow when it comes to morality, you don't need to go under moral training. You don't need to have moral expertise. And people might say, oh, well, you're born with it. It's in your soul or whatever. But there are people with PhDs in moral philosophy. There are experts in the field of morality, just like in any other field.
But isn't the idea that everyone has their own morals, right?
Sure.
Now, I guess there's universal morals that I would hope that we all share. Killing someone is bad. Things like that.
Well, unless they disagree with me politically, then it's fine to kill them.
But even then, we have debates, the death penalty and things like that.
Right.
But okay, then forget it. everyone has their own morals then.
So
But
Okay,
even
go
if
ahead.
I know people that have we have different morals.
yeah, we do.
That doesn't mean I hate you and think that, I hope no one finds out I'm friends with Brian. I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed. Brian supports something I don't. So
Yeah.
who the hell agrees with you on everything? Do you know what I mean? Like,
And you don't even
this-
agree with yourself on everything, right? People evolve and change and stuff. You
well,
know?
you're supposed, you would think.
Yeah.
But
So, but actually, Chris, you're actually wading into more. So I was a double major in undergrad. I majored in philosophy and specifically in ethics. And what's interesting is that what you're talking about is the difference between like there's sort of moral relativism, right? Which is like everyone has their different principles,
Yeah.
and then there's like sort of moral. There's more universal ethics, right? The idea that there's one source of morality and people are either right or wrong on it. Like that could come from God, for instance. You know, a lot of religious philosophy dictates that like there's a certain God or there are multiple gods or whatever, and that those divine creatures end up deciding what is right or wrong. But the point is, and this is I think where you and I totally agree, even though we often arrive at different ethical conclusions, is that you can be friends with someone, you can have a conversation with someone who not only has different opinions than you, but who has different values than you, and has
Yes.
different morals and different ethical beliefs.
100%. And like, humanity wouldn't have so many of the problems that it has. I know I sound like I interrupt myself all the time. Humanity wouldn't have the problems it has if people understood that you can be friends and accept people who have totally different morals and values and beliefs.
Right.
Like, we're still human.
Yeah.
We're all human. This is why wars start, you
Sure.
know, because we get caught up on this crap, and we stop seeing each other as human.
Yeah.
It really makes me very sad.
Right. And I think actually, you know, so I had written down some questions here, like, you know, can you be friends with people who you disagree with?
I'm friends with. I don't. That is such an absurd question, and I think about it too. But everyone you're friends with is someone you disagree with. 'Cause
Yeah.
no one thinks everything you think.
It's interesting though, and I want to comment on this for a second because you and I. So typically when we think about people we disagree with, we think, okay, yeah, we disagree on the small stuff, but then the big stuff we agree on, right? Like that's what's that I think that's what most people conceptualize. So what's interesting about Chris and I though is that we're both. You're gonna hate that I'm about to say this, by the way. We're both artists.
Oh yeah,
We are.
we are.
We're comics. We're podcasters. I have written and published poetry before. You have written and published songs.
Okay, yeah.
We're artists. And so we put much
This
more...
is going to be the clip from the...
I know it is. I know it is. We have put a lot of value in aesthetic preferences. I put a lot of weight on when I ask people, what's your favorite music? What's your favorite movie? I actually, for some people, put more weight on their answer to that question than like, who did you vote for?
Yeah.
Like I would, okay, here's something funny. I think I would rather be friends with someone who voted differently than me, but like loved the Beatles, than someone who voted the same way I did, or maybe shares some of my same beliefs, ethical beliefs, but doesn't like the Beatles.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, politics doesn't really have much to do with your like personal relationships.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I don't.
So, and if it does, then that is, so there are people who I think define themselves like almost entirely by their political beliefs, but again, on both sides of the aisle.
There's some people who think I do that.
Right.
So.
Well, and you feel free to get into this. I mean, let's fucking talk about this, and then if we don't like it, we can cut it out. But you know, you work for Jimmy Dore.
Yeah.
And for those of you watching in Singapore right now that don't know who Jimmy Dore is, and I don't know, maybe he has a following in Japan.
He is a political comedian.
Yeah.
Basically, is how I would describe him.
Right.
And you know, people think he's. My friend Dax brought me on stage at Fourth Wall. You were there, I think. He goes, Chris works for a Republican comedian. Like, what?
Yeah.
He's not a Republican. He doesn't vote Republican.
Why do you think?
He's been a Democrat his whole life?
Sure.
Jimmy and I have similar, I think, political ideologies.
Uh-huh.
The way I look at it is like disaffected liberal.
Yeah.
Basically, I think I still feel like I'm a liberal person. I don't think a lot of the left is not liberal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not left. It's actually very conservative.
Yeah.
They want to tell you what to say and what to think. They want to dictate those things. Now they're pro-war. They love war now with Ukraine. They want to keep it. It's just everything that we used to fight for and march against is now flipped, and there's all these excuses for it. And it's usually because Trump's bad and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I don't like Trump. I've never voted for him, and yet people think that I'm some MAGA guy because I say what I just said, things like what I just said.
Yeah. Before I tried to interrupt, I'm glad you finished that because I tried to interrupt you, and I'm glad
it's fine.
you got your no. But because what you just said was much more interesting than what I was going to say. So let me ask a question though. Why do you think Dorr gets this reputation of being conservative?
Well, there's a real thing on. Let me think.
Because I've listened to the podcast, by the way, and I'll just say that someone who doesn't work with him, and I've met him a couple times. Really nice guy, by the way. He just kind of strikes me a little bit like Bill Maher.
Yeah, I mean, people say Bill Maher is, the left hates Bill Maher.
Now,
I don't even like calling them the left because they're not liberal.
Yeah.
They're not. They're illiberal.
Sure.
They're very. They're conservative. They're very conservative. They're in their beliefs.
Yeah.
Think like I think. Say what I say. Take your medicine. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the hippies hated the government. They hated the CIA. They hated the military-industrial complex. None of that. I hear none of that from.
Right.
Okay, I'm going on a
No,
rant now
but
about
that's
politics.
This is. I mean, I asked, right? I asked. So the
but
question
why
is,
does Dorr get?
Yeah.
There's so many reasons for it. I could go down a list. One is like there's this mentality of kind of what we've been talking about here, of like if you're not with us, you're against us.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I have friends that literally say you're either a Democrat or you're a MAGA Trumper. There's nothing else. There's 500 genders, Brian, but there's 2 political parties. There's 56 sexualities, but anyway, that's a bit.
You can watch Chris do that live on stage, by the way. This is a bit that he does. Yeah.
I love all the genders equally. This is not a hateful thing.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. Anyway, yeah. So it's this intolerance. It's intolerance of like, if you're not with me, you're against me. The good guys think this and the bad guys think this.
Uh-huh.
So if you say anything that the bad guys think, you're bad.
Right.
So you must be Republican. There's that. That's one reason. Another reason might be that the parties have changed. They've switched. Someone was telling me that they heard that this happens every 20 years or so. I forget who was saying this.
I think it was me.
Was it you?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember. But yeah, the parties, they do. I mean, it has happened before.
Right.
Yeah, maybe the left is just has just changed, and the right has changed a little bit too. I think they both have changed.
Right.
But again, right now I sound like I'm loving Republicans and the right wingers. I'm not. None of my beliefs are really in line with that. I like universal health care.
Yeah.
I'm pro-choice. So I'm not really don't align with that, but a lot of the anti-war, pro-free speech stuff I hear is usually not from the left anymore. So parties might have switched. That's a second reason why Dorr gets mislabeled that. God, there was more, and now I'm forgetting.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I was just sort of curious about, and I want to bring this back to our podcast and theory of disagreement a little bit, because I guess the question is, so you and I, we situate ourselves amongst people we disagree with,
Yeah,
And
I have friends I have Palestinian friends and I have Israeli friends.
Yeah.
I love them both. I disagree on certain things,
right.
but I'm not embarrassed to be their friend. I'm not disowning them. Like,
Yeah.
anyway.
The question, the follow-up question is there a line that would need to be crossed for you to not be friends
I'm
with
so
someone?
happy you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing I wanted to talk about. So for me, and I'm getting angry just visiting this. So this is for me, the line is if it's personal.
Okay.
If you're personally insulting me,
Yeah.
personally attacking me, especially if you're doing it publicly online on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, if a friend of mine is doing that, that is really fucked up.
Yeah.
That is a line. Don't personally attack me on something. That's screwed up. And that's why I've lost the friends that I've lost. That's why I lost them, because a discussion about a political or social issue or an opinion turned into them personally attacking me.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that I've ever done that to somebody. I've never insulted them personally. That's the line. I'm fine to disagree on anything, but when you start acting like somebody's a horrendous human being because of what they think, or trying to shame them online, that is way over the line if someone's your friend.
Right.
So that's the line. And what I've noticed about this is I think the reason I'm really on a rant now. What I've noticed is that these people, I think what happens is when you disagree with them about their political belief, I think that they're taking that as a personal insult to them. They're so tied to their belief that they're like, "Oh, Chris doesn't agree with me on this. He's telling me I'm an idiot." Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
They take it as a personal insult that I don't agree with their opinion.
Yeah.
And then they turn it around and they'll tell me I'm, a terrible person or
Right.
something. But anyway.
No, I think that is all really relevant to just general theory of disagreement, which is, the difference between what is your opinion and who you are as a person.
Yes, those are so different.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that makes us a little bit different is that we are able to separate people's opinions and beliefs from their essence or being or whatever, or how we like spending time with them. What I think about this is, first of all, on my Hinge bio, I don't know if are we sponsored by Hinge yet?
Yeah, we are.
On my Hinge bio.
Yep.
And I think it might be on my Tinder bio and my Bumble bio.
Damn. This guy's on every app.
Yeah. It's not on my Grindr bio though.
Oh shit.
Is that I think the prompt on Hinge is like, what do you love? And one thing I wrote is I love learning new things. And the reason why I put that is because I can really only learn new things from people that I feel like I disagree with.
Yeah, of course.
How am I going to learn new things about someone who has all my same interests and beliefs and all of that stuff?
Insane, dude.
Now, actually, what I'll say is, and this relates to the analogy I made about the Beatles, like, I love learning new things about the things I love. Like, I love learning new things about classic rock music. I love learning new things about comedy. I love learning new things about, Chris Keene, the things I love. But I also love learning new things about things I don't know a lot about. And that often comes from places of disagreement where I disagree with someone, and then they tell me something. And the cool thing about that is that it might get me to change my mind on an issue too.
Yeah.
Which that's a value that's also been lost, is changing your mind.
I've changed my mind on things for sure.
Yeah.
From talking to people and listening to things. Yeah.
Right. I also
Dude, stand-up comedy bits have made me change my mind.
Oh, for
things.
sure. Which ones?
Louis' bit about abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it didn't change. Do you know the bit from 2017?
Yeah, but
he's like,
there are people in the audience that might not.
Oh, he just has a bit about abortion where he's like, you either believe it's a baby or it's a shit, like a piece of shit. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
So, and like the people who are pro-life, they believe it's murder. They
Right.
literally believe it's murder.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think before that, I don't think I comprehended that, oh, these people actually think it's murder. Like, they're not these evil people who want to control women's bodies. They think, oh, life is being taken.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. But like, I was doing what I hate what people do now, which is you're not even listening to the other side's opinion.
Right.
Like, why do they think that?
Mm-hmm.
You're just going, oh, they think that, they're bad.
Right.
You're not like, okay, well, why do they think that? Because I think most people have reasonable reasons for why they think things.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with them, but this assumption that somebody is evil because they think something. If somebody's pro-life, oh, they hate women. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I'm pro-choice.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want abortion to be illegal, but I get the argument.
I think that it really comes down to one thing I noticed, like if we take the pro-life, pro-choice debate, which I'm also pro-choice,
Yeah.
is that what I like to say to people, though, is like, if you believed what they believed about this issue, you'd be acting the same way.
Yes.
You would be, if you believe that abortion was murder, then you'd be protesting outside of Planned Parenthoods too.
It's a genocide.
And so
it
just comes down to a difference in belief and whatnot. And again,
You know what's nuts? I had a conversation about this with some very woke friends of mine,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, well, we talked about it, and I told them, well, doctors say that life begins at conception, and they were arguing with me about this. They were like, no, that's not true. That's not it. And then I had to look it up and show them that, the science on this, which they love,
Yeah.
until it disagrees with their beliefs. They love the science.
And the idea of science disagreeing with anything is kind of funny, right? Because science isn't like having a opinion.
Right, and it's always changing.
Yeah.
There is no set science.
Right.
Like, that's the whole point of science. But yeah, so I showed them this, and now I forgot my original point, but just
just that they're not listening to the other side.
Yeah, that, but, and also, like, yeah, anyway, but I forgot what we were saying.
No, we were talking
I think I'm getting too worked up with this conversation. I feel I'm going to watch this back. I'm going to hate, I already hate myself, but I'll hate myself a little more.
Well, that's okay. I've got a lot of love for you and for this conversation. Let's talk about something. Let's just get into this for maybe 5 minutes, okay?
Abortion or something else?
And something else.
Okay.
Let's talk COVID for a sec.
Oh, shit. You ever do that when you were a kid?
Yeah, they won't understand what we're doing on Spotify, though.
Oh, this is
What are you doing, Chris?
What is it, dipping?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, you take the chewing tobacco and the kids in my high school, they'd be like, you doing fucking dipping.
I don't dip.
I just remembered that we're on a podcast
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
right. We're being broadcast to billions of people. You doing this?
Yeah, all the I don't know. They'd be chewing tobacco and doing that. Anyway.
So this is interesting because you still have a lot of very strong opinions about the pandemic and COVID and the way all of that was handled.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to get into all of it.
Yeah,
by the way. But here's something that's interesting because it was a very divisive issue in 2020 and 2021. And
we have disagreements.
And that's what I want to get into that because so far we've talked about how we've had all these disagreements, but in actuality we've been agreeing a lot.
Oh.
And that was actually Dervosela's theory about this podcast, by the way, was that he goes, what are you guys going to talk about? I'm like, the theory of disagreement. He goes, oh, you guys are going to agree on a lot of that, is what he said.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
But so Chris was, I don't want to summarize your beliefs, actually. I'll let you do it. But I was and still am pro-vaccine.
Uh-huh.
And I was, at the time, pro-vaccine mandate. And I don't look back at that and regret having that stance.
Uh-huh.
What the mandate looks like now in this world where a lot of people are vaccinated, I'm not sure about yet.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason there were to be a mandate on vaccines, I don't necessarily think I'd be against it.
Okay.
So I imagine that's very different than your belief on this issue, though.
Do I want the government to tell me I should inject something into my body? Of course I do. Why would I not want that? That's Yeah, I think a little differently
Yeah.
on this.
So let me ask though, so you're anti-mandate, obviously.
100%
Are you
anti-mandate.
are you anti-vaccine? Like, do you think vaccine should be the COVID vaccine particularly should be illegal?
Of course not.
Okay.
And that's what I don't understand about this anti-vax thing, like the RFK or whatever. They attack people like that, or Jimmy Dore for being anti-vax. I don't think anyone is saying that, or maybe some people are.
No, I think there are people who think the
you're
COVID
right.
vaccine should be illegal.
You're right. There
Yeah.
are. I mean, there's people that think everything, but I think most people that argue against the vaccine is that well, first of all, it shouldn't be mandated for many reasons, but they just want regular like research into it, and these companies they can't even be held liable if something goes wrong. Did you see that? Like
Yeah.
and that's not true with other drugs. It's just I think it's just with the COVID vaccine, but I'm wondering if it's for other vaccines.
I don't
too.
know.
Okay, well, I know it's for the COVID vaccine that the companies can't be held liable,
Right.
if there's a bad reaction or something.
So let's just
And why would you have that law if it's so safe? Why do you need that?
All right, listen.
But
I'm
anyway.
not super interested in debating
No, it's fine.
COVID right now. But what I
Okay,
am
so-
interested in doing
Yeah,
here
tell me why you
is,
want to.
and the reason I bring this up is that, okay, so here's this major disagreement you and I have, and if you and I having this now feels a little bit lower stakes, just in the general consensus. You and I recently talked about how, it still should potentially be a big deal, that but I think that.
Sorry.
I think that things like if this podcast were airing in 2021, for instance.
Well, it would be. Oh, here's a bit. It would be fucking banned on every platform. It's not even a joke, and people just. Oh well, it agrees with what I think, so I'm okay with that.
Right.
And then a year later, they're banning pro-Palestine stuff, and you're going, wait, why can't I say my pro? Oh, maybe because you were pro-censorship a year ago. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I can't. I'm going to have to take a break from this podcast. Sorry.
Well, but how do you think you and I have been able to stay friends despite this actually pretty big disagreement on this issue?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that what does that have to do with who you are as a person? What does that have to do with our friendship? I mean, how did we lose this reality? You know what I mean? That doesn't have anything to do with who somebody is as a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna cry on this podcast because it's so sad to me that you're villainizing people, demonizing people, and losing like family members, dude. People lose family members because they, over political disagreements.
Of course.
Over they didn't get the vaccine, or they voted for Trump.
Marriages.
You're not talking to your mom because she voted for Trump. Like,
I know so many couples that break up over this stuff, and married couples with children and stuff too. It's not just
it's very sad.
It is.
Very
it is,
sad.
and I'd like to live in a world where there was more agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And I think that makes life interesting. And where I want to take this a little bit here is where I think actually this goes even further, which is, and the reason I paused on further is I wasn't sure if I wanted to say further or farther. I think I want to say further, though, not
Okay.
farther. I think farther's measuring a physical distance.
I'm not smart enough to know.
See, this is why I only got half a PhD in English. If I'd gotten the full PhD, I would know. I think it's further.
Okay.
But the question is, can disagreement actually be a good thing?
It is vital. That is so vital.
Yeah.
When you don't have disagreement, you get Nazi Germany. That's fascism. Everyone thinking the same, everyone acting the same, right?
Right.
That's what happens when there's no disagreement.
I agree. But I don't mean necessarily society in terms of society or
okay.
big picture stuff. I mean just in terms of individual people living individual lives. I do think disagreement is necessary, but I also think that it might be a very productive sort of I don't want to call it's not an emotion, but a productive feeling or a productive
It's how you learn.
mode of communication. That's how I want to phrase this.
Isn't that how we learn?
For sure, 100%. And that gets back to the
Like adversity is how you learn.
Right.
Like that's why it's weird that people want safe spaces
Uh-huh.
and they don't want to hear anything that might upset them. That's how you learn and grow as a person, though.
Yeah.
Like,
So I have also been told that people want to hear more stories about classic rock music on this podcast.
that they do. I've heard.
They've
a lot
not
of
heard
that.
enough of them.
Okay.
And I'm wearing my Beatles shirt.
I see that.
Or
I
one
love
of them.
the
I've got
Beatles shirt.
many Beatles shirts. I want to tell a story about classic rock for
Oh,
a second,
fuck yeah!
as this relates to Disagreement.
All right.
Are you familiar with the Beatles, Chris?
I've heard of them.
Yeah.
That was Harry Styles' band
Yeah,
before
that's right.
he went solo?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, the Beatles were a huge deal. I don't know if you're aware of that. In fact, you and I, let's spoil it. We want to do an episode, The Theory of the Beatles.
It might be the
actually.
next one, maybe.
Yeah, I want to. We need something lighter hearted than this.
yeah, we can do that. We can do the Theory of Beatles next.
I'd love to. And potentially I'd like to bring a guest on that too.
Not Nick.
No. I think it'd be great if we brought up Nick every episode and we just never had him on.
Oh, that's a good idea. He should be banned from the podcast. That's awesome.
I want to talk about, though, so just very quickly, so the Beatles were the most popular band in human history from about 1963 to 1966, okay? And you and I have done this before. We've discussed all the records they broke and everything, but the way I analogize it in modern discourse for people that don't understand is it's like if there was only one rapper, okay? And all the rap music you heard was just from one rapper. Now there would be other genres of music. There would still be rock and there would still be EDM. But if every rap song came from one rapper, that's the equivalent to how popular the Beatles were from 1963 to 1965 or 66, but really more like 65. Mm-hmm. And the band themselves got exhausted by constantly producing music, constantly touring. They wanted to evolve and change their music. They wanted to become more of a studio band. They actually, and this is we'll talk about this in the Theory of the Beatles episode, but they invented the music video because they didn't want to tour anymore, so they wanted to broadcast themselves playing music to everyone without needing to go everywhere to do that.
Yeah.
But actually, they reached a level of popularity that was so unprecedented, and they just decided to
almost as big as this podcast.
Yeah, that's
almost.
Right. We are the Beatles of podcasts.
The Beatles of podcasts.
They do you know the Beatles actually kind of broke up in late 1960 in 1966 basically after they finished recording Revolver.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because this was a really important time for them. John Lennon ended up making a movie called How I Won the War, which is very funny. It's not a great movie, but it's very funny and whimsical and stuff.
I haven't seen it.
McCartney ended up doing a soundtrack album with George Martin, who was the producer of the Beatles. That album, I think, won the Oscar for Best Soundtrack, I think.
Okay.
George went to India during that time, and that's kind of he'd already been very interested in Indian music, but that's really what solidified that for him. And to quote Ringo Starr, he said, "And I got fat on the couch." That was Ringo.
That's funny.
But so it was interesting because the Beatles reunited then in 67, and what happened when they were all sort of split up at the time was they came back and all had wildly different conceptions of what the Beatles should sound like.
Right.
After that.
That's funny.
They came back and George wanted it to sound like a lot of Eastern influences in music. Paul wanted the next Beatles album to basically just be Pet Sounds. Mm-hmm. Paul McCartney just was obsessed with Pet Sounds and wanted to be the Beach Boys. And John Lennon, who had also gotten really involved in drugs during this period of separation, really wanted it to be a very, I call it the psychedelic Stones. It's like psychedelic music mixed with the Rolling Stones. And so there was no consensus of these three guys. And no offense to Ringo, but he didn't really get an opinion, because you had these three musical geniuses who were all there and wanted to. So they make this album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which the idea of that was there was so much disagreement. They were like, okay, let's pretend we're not the Beatles. Let's pretend we're this other band, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and then maybe that might allow us to be more creative. And that album is often cited as the best Beatles album. I don't think it's the best, but I do think it's the most important Beatles album.
I think it's the worst. I'm not even kidding.
It's not worse than Yellow Submarine.
Oh, okay.
It's
Is
not
that
worse.
technically an album?
It's half an album, but yeah, the
count
Beatles had
that.
13 albums. I don't think it's the worst. I think it's
Is Magical Mystery Tour technically an album?
yeah.
Why don't
that's
I
more of
count
a real
those?
album than I think Pepper was. I mean, sorry,
Okay.
not than Pepper, than Yellow Submarine was.
Okay, I don't really count.
It's not okay. So like in terms of full studio albums,
I think.
see,
it's
we're
the
already
worst.
doing the Theory of the Beatles podcast right now.
Yeah.
In terms of full studio albums, I guess it would be Please Please Me, With the Beatles, Hard Day's Night, Beatles
Wait.
for Sale,
Oh, you're
Help,
going in order. Okay.
Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sgt. Pepper, White Album, Abbey Road, Let It Be. Those would be the full studio Beatles
Oh,
albums.
yeah. So in my opinion, Sgt. Pepper is the worst
Okay.
out of all those.
That's crazy.
Really?
That's insane. It's not the worst, but
Really?
it's not. It's
Out of all those records you just named?
yeah, it's not the worst, but it is. It's the most important Beatles album, and it's still considered probably the most important album ever released. There are a lot of rankings have it as number one, and
Because it's influential.
yeah.
By the way, I do feel like that album sounds like a combination of all those things you just mentioned that they wanted to
exactly, it is. That's exactly why.
do. Yeah.
But it is because of Disagreement that album happened.
Yes. That's a
and-
really good point.
The way that they came to, like, okay, so if you just kind of go through this track by track for a second. This, by the way, this is going to matter to like 7 people listening to this, but the
Well,
7 people listening to this, it's going to really matter to them.
But I don't know how far you want to get into this because we should save some of this for the Beatles.
I've got
one.
so much to say about the Beatles,
Okay.
it doesn't matter. But like, if you just kind of go track by track for this, like, it's interesting because like the title track, Sgt. Pepper's, is like a rock song, right?
Mhm.
But then you get, and then With a Little Help from My Friends is like basically a reprise of that. But then you get, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which is like a psychedelic rock song.
Yep.
Then you have Getting Better, which is like a Beach Boys song, right?
Yeah.
Then you have, you just kind of go With and Without You, which is almost an entirely sitar instrumental song. Right?
Okay.
Benefit of Mr. Kite, which is again going back to the psychedelic stuff. Lovely Rita, which is more of like a Beach Boys-y song. But
Yeah.
the real, like, that album is really, to me, the pinnacle of Lennon and McCartney. Harrison hadn't quite figured it out yet. He figures it out a little bit later on the White Album.
I'm not a big George Harrison fan. I don't
He's
know
my
why.
all-time favorite Beatle. So we'll
I
have
know,
to talk
yeah,
about
you
this on
told
Theory
me
of Beatles.
Yeah, we will.
But Harrison hadn't quite figured it out yet. That album is really Lennon and McCartney.
Mhm.
And the sort of nexus point of their disagreement comes out to this amazing album.
Okay.
And if you look at the way that the disagreement between Lennon and McCartney on that album manifests, it's really interesting because
You don't feel like Rubber Soul had that?
it's not the nexus of their disagreement
Okay.
though. They were really on the same page for most of Rubber Soul in terms of what they wanted the Beatles to sound like.
Okay, I guess I see what you're saying.
When they came back from their brief breakup in '66 is when they really had different conceptions of what they wanted it to sound like.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, now I'm thinking. Okay,
Yeah.
you're right.
So
Yeah, because the differences are really on display,
Right.
like on the White Album.
well, the White Album's a mess of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the White
I
Album.
do too. I like the
Uh,
White Album more than Sgt. Pepper, but it's less coherent as
And then,
an album.
and then Abbey Road,
Yeah.
too. I actually love Let It Be. I love Let It Be so much. One reason is because it's stripped down, and they get back to. It feels stripped down at least
Yeah.
compared to the Sgt. Pepper or something. And they're getting back to their
Okay, we have to save that for the
All right,
theory
yeah,
for the
sorry.
Theory of Beatles album. But because I want
wanna
to
say one more thing,
Go
but-
go 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 go.
No, I just love the song. Oh man, I'm forgetting the name of the song now.
Sing it.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
No, sing it.
No, it's driving me crazy.
Chris is
Here,
a singer.
say what you're gonna say.
No, I want you to look up the album.
I'm forgetting what I'm talking about now. We're gonna.
You're
have
talking
to,
about the song on Let It Be that you love.
It's driving me crazy.
So hold on. Those titles are Two of Us, Dig a Pony, Across the Universe, Let It Be, Long and Winding Road.
Long and Winding Road. God, I couldn't think of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that's like, and I'm more of a John Lennon fan.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And I think I'm the only person I know that feels that way about that song.
You know
Most
what's-
people hate that song.
You know what's crazy?
that I
That's
know.
like my mom's favorite Beatles song too.
Interesting.
Yeah, she loves
I don't
that.
understand. Everyone I play that to, they're like, I don't like this. It's like
Oh, it's
cheesy.
beautiful.
or
It's very McCartney, very you know, the way McCartney
it's
was once
so-
described.
Has so much heart to it, though. It's
Yeah.
not just a cheese. Like McCartney sometimes was surface level pop kind of
Right.
stuff.
Pop conservative is how I heard him, and I like that term for him.
Okay.
I
I like the strings on Across the Universe and long. You know how they did
Right.
the strip.
Well, that
down,
was
Let
all
It
Phil
Be?
Spector, yeah. Then there was Let It Be Naked, which was
Yeah, see, I didn't like that as much.
Okay.
A lot of people loved Let It Be Naked, and I was like, I like the overproduced strings on this stuff. Anyway,
no,
sorry, enough with
we should get back to Disagreement because we're gonna have a lot to say about the Beatles on
Yes.
Theory of the Beatles, which should be the next pod.
Okay.
But what I want to say about Disagreement is why Sgt. Pepper works as an album and why it's considered, I think, so influential is because of Disagreement. And specifically, like, all right, so the two moments I want to talk about in that album is in the song Getting Better, which is that's such a McCartney song, it's unbelievable. McCartney's like the chorus of that song is it's getting better all the time. Better, better, better. You know that.
Mhm.
But Lennon comes in and says it can't get any worse. It's getting better all the time. It can't get any worse. And that's such the perfect amalgamation of Lennon and McCartney.
Yeah, that's
McCartney
true.
saying it's getting better all the time, and Lennon saying it can't get any worse.
This is on Sgt. Pepper,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
I think it's the fourth track on Pepper.
You know what? I think I'm agreeing with you, Brian. I think we're doing what Nick said because you just reminded me of the ultimate Lennon McCartney thing, and I think it's on that record.
which is A Day in the Life.
yes,
Yeah, that was the second one I was going to mention.
That's the
So,
ultimate.
The ultimate A Day in the Life is maybe like I always say this: there are no right answers to the question of what is the greatest song of all time. There are only wrong answers to it. As in, if God came down from the sky and was like the greatest song of all time is "Pop Goes the Weasel," I would have a panic attack. I'd have a meltdown because that means everything I know about music is wrong. If I learned that Pop Goes the Weasel is the greatest song of all time, everything I know about music is wrong. But then God can come down and say a lot of songs are the greatest song of all time, and I would feel like relief, you know? So like A Day in the Life, if God came down and was like, oh, that's the greatest song of all time, I'd be like, oh, thank God. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. I can live my life. If he came down and said like Bohemian Rhapsody was the greatest song of all time, I'd be okay with that, right? If he came, there are a lot of eligible answers to that song. I mean, sorry, to that answer. But like Pop Goes the Weasel, or like I'm trying to think about like what else. Like I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but because you get what I'm saying.
yes,
But what makes A Day in the Life really special is that disagreement.
yeah,
You get Lennon talking about wars. I read the news today. Oh boy, a lucky man that made the grave. He's talking about World War II. He's talking about depression. He's talking about the state of English politics
yeah,
in Albert Hall, all of that stuff. And what is McCartney talking about? Woke up, got out of bed,
yeah.
dragged a
It's
comb
the
across my
ultimate-
head. Just the most banal, daily routine stuff.
And the tone of them is so different.
It's so, but that's
it
what
doesn't
makes
even
them
make sense that
amazing.
it works together.
It
but
works,
It does.
but it works because of the disagreement.
Yes, and that's why a lot of the times bands they need each other. That's why a lot of times when people in bands go solo,
Right.
it's just not as good.
Yeah.
Because the disagreement, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Uh,
What makes the Beatles really special is that all of their solo stuff, both John, Paul, and George's solo stuff, is really good. And that's the distinction. Because you look at other bands, like take Pink Floyd, for example. Chris Keene, by the way, huge Pink Floyd fan.
they're not my favorite, but I do like some Pink Floyd.
But
I
if-
used to hate them. But
Yeah.
I like.
Well, I love Pink Floyd, but if you listen to Waters' solo stuff, it's terrible. And
Okay.
Gilmore's solo stuff is terrible. You ever, like, Led Zeppelin, like, Plant's solo stuff is not very good,
I don't love McCartney's solo stuff. I know he's had
Yeah.
tons of it. but
McCartney's problem. Oh God,
really-
now we're just doing the theory of the
Lennon's
Beatles.
solo stuff I almost like more than the Beatles, which is ridiculous.
You and I have talked about
but
this. I love Lennon's solo
I know
stuff.
it's ridiculous.
And I love George's solo stuff too. But yeah, McCartney's problem is that he wasn't very interested in making albums. He was interested in making individual songs
yeah.
and then going on tour.
Yeah.
Lennon never went on tour. When he was for the 10 years after the Beatles, he was alive. He was just interested in making albums and doing drugs with Harry Nilsson, but that's a different conversation. And George George went on one tour. That's it.
Okay, so what do you think it is about the Disagreement that makes it work, makes it interesting?
Because
versus,
they agreed to disagree.
yeah.
Lennon said, "I want to talk about post World War II."
But why is that better? Because it's more interesting.
Yeah.
It's more interesting to hear Lennon's part of Day in the Life and then hear Paul's.
Yeah.
Because if Lennon just wrote that song himself, the whole song would just be in that tone and be that thing.
Yeah.
And same with Paul.
Right.
So I guess it's just more interesting when you have more ideas and more. It's a more interesting.
What
thing.
it allows for.
It's diversity. It's no, I'm not even kidding.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, that's what I find so funny about all this, like left wing ideology, is it's all about diversity and acceptance and tolerance, but then it's very. It depends on what we're talking about, because it's very not about diversity if you're talking about like. Okay, I'm
no.
getting
Keep
last.
going. I've got something funny to say. Go on.
No, it's like, there's no diversity of thought.
Yeah.
That's not allowed. There's no, and this is what makes life interesting. But anyway,
I'm so sorry.
No,
I just
it's
had a
okay.
very funny thought, which is the title of this episode should be COVID, DEI, and the Beatles,
All right, let's do it.
featuring Nick Dervasla.
Oh, man.
I agree with you, and furthermore, want to say that I think that I think that we don't value other people's opinions enough in society. And so what we need to be doing is embracing them.
Is it because people, is it social media? I don't know, but people seem to have a very narcissistic belief that they're right about everything, that they're good and right and their opinion matters more than anything. And what is it? 'Cause
I think
it
that's
wasn't
a good,
like this 20 years ago.
I think that's a good question. And in fact, I think that's a good kind of question to wrap up with here, which
Yeah.
is, why don't you guys tell us? Listen, you've listened to us ramble about this for a little over an hour now. You heard us talk about our disagreements. You heard us talk about our opinions on disagreements. You heard us talk about the Beatles. Why don't you tell us in the comments what you think the origin of this is? I think we've got opinions, but as we want to wrap up this episode, the way we wrap up every episode, Chris Keene, what is the theory of disagreement?
I was going to say one other thing before I say that. Should I not?
No, you should.
I was just going to say that I do think that social media is a big part of it, because what social media did is it puts the spotlight on you.
Yeah.
So then everything's about you. And I think that has affected people in how they treat each other and all
Sure.
that. Anyway, sorry. What is the I feel like I ruined the flow. You've set me up with the question. I ruined it. That was good. Do you want to start? Maybe.
Okay. Well,
Brian Wiora.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've come to the end, folks. And I just want to say, I don't do it as good as you. You do the wrap up really well. Brian Wiora, tell us, what do you believe the theory of disagreement is?
So I think what we've learned here today is, first of all, that there needs to be more tolerance for disagreement among society. That ultimately the reason why you hate people or think they're evil comes from a form of respect. They're able to get under your skin in a certain way. And also that disagreeing with someone might end up being a good thing, because you might end up learning something new or improving what you have to say and what you think about the situation.
Yeah, it almost seems like the essence of life almost, is disagreement, is like celebrating our differences, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing that we're supposed to be doing, is like we used to have this thing in my school as a kid, Respect for Differences Day, and we'd celebrate everybody's like different cultures or whatever things they think, whatever it could be.
Yeah.
It was just about respecting each other despite our differences. And
Right.
in that it does feel like that's all the essence of life. It's certainly like we said in the beginning what the country's supposed to be about, what America's supposed to be. Like the countries that don't have respect for disagreement are usually dictatorships and places like that. So I don't know how we've lost the plot so much on villainizing each other. But yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we discussed today that's important is that just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that they're a bad person.
Right. I think people take it personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, they can take disagreements personally and then get into arguments and fight. And, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's been the podcast for today. Chris, Keene, you got anything to plug? Anything coming up?
Follow me at Chris G. Keene on every platform. I'm going to be out on the road with Jimmy Dore in April 1 through 7, something like that. We're going to be in the Northeast, like Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. Come to a show if you're there. How about
great.
Brian Wiora? Where can they find you?
They can find me at Brian Wiora. They can also find me at Zebra Room Comedy, which is my new comedy club that I just opened in Los Angeles.
We didn't even talk about it, dude.
Oh, that's not what the point of this podcast is, though. They can find us there, and they can find more information about the club there. I am at the Hollywood Improv tonight, which is the night of March 6th. But I will be performing around LA at various times. I have no plans to be on the road at any time soon. I'm
can't all be a big shot like
that's
me,
right.
You know?
Otherwise, for this podcast, please feel free to follow our Instagram page at the Theory of Nothing Podcast. You can find us on Spotify or YouTube.
Hell yeah.
All right. Next time. We'll see you there.
Bye, guys.